Over in the pages of Marvel Comics X-Men titles, the Krakoan era is about to come to a close. Thankfully, Marvel is assembling all their most fascinating storylines, including the influence that Mr. Sinister has on Professor Xavier, as well as the mysterious Dominion character from Sins of Sinister. Plus, the White Hot Room is back, as well as the Mutants of Destiny and Exodus, along with a fascinating connection to Jean Grey. Plus, towards the back half of this chapter, we even get more scheming along with Mother Righteous and the White Hot Room. My name is Araco Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and explore the twisty, turny pages of Immortal X-Men issue 17. Before we get deeper into the video, want to encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button over on this video. X my heart. Xavier swore he would stay on Krakoa and defend its memory. He's leaving. There must be a good reason to leave one doomed island for another, and the dark secrets that await beneath Muir Island. Meanwhile, something is very off with Jean, or is it something very right? Immortal X-Men 17 is written from Kieron Gillen, featuring artwork from Juan Jose Ryp. We have colors from David Curiel, letters from VC's Clayton, Cowles, design from Tom Muller and Jay Bowen. And we have a cover introducing Jean Grey's presence in the issue, coming in directly from the incredible Mark Brooks. Really love all the different contexts that Mark Brooks is able to capture Jean on within the background of this cover. Also think there's just a really engaging bleed coming in with Jean's current costume over in the foreground as opposed to the background here. I want to extend a big thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste and preview some of these really epic opening sequences coming in directly from Juan Jose Ryp. I think Juan Jose Ryp is so much of a different artist than what readers are used to seeing over from traditional Immortal X-Men artist Lucas Werneck. I do think there's a bit of a trade-off here. Juan Jose Ryp's line is definitely less pleasing. It's a little bit less detailed than what we've seen from Werneck, but I do have to say that I think some of the expressions from the characters are a little bit more dynamic than what we can see over with Werneck's line. It's almost hard for me to tell which artist I prefer, other than the fact that I think in some situations, Lucas Werneck's line is adapted more closely over to Kieron Gillen's script. I love this opening sequence with Professor Xavier. Unfortunately, we don't have any preview pages in it, but Xavier is really coming to terms with the bombshell cliffhanger over from last issue, where we really got to see just how strong Sinister's grip is over on Xavier. I really love all the different ways he took these ramifications to heart and started to explore just how close the influence of Sinister is over on Krakoa here. I thought this preview page that we have up on the screen here, showing a fight between Exodus, Hope, and Apocalypse, did a phenomenal job fleshing out the really harrowing and sinister nature that the White Hot Room storyline brings towards this narrative. I also think there's some great character expressions as well for individuals like Jean Grey, who are directly influenced from their core miniseries over from Louise Simonson in this issue. For me, one of my favorite visual elements in Immortal X-Men 17 was seeing Apocalypse battle a big fight over with Exodus in the issue. Really found that Juan Jose Ryp captured the fearsome power of each of these characters as well as the individual gravitas that they lend toward each other. I think this next page where we get to see both Apocalypse as well as Exodus's fists collide show just how much power each of these mutants are carrying on the page. I also think Juan Jose Ryp just does a great job with some of these canted angles, introducing so much tension within the narrative of Immortal X-Men. Towards the end of this fight scene with Exodus and Apocalypse, we get to see an incredibly triumphant moment over with Hope, influenced directly from the Phoenix, that was an incredibly cathartic aspect to this tale. It was also really fantastic to see the narrative switch back over to Professor Xavier and this echoey version of Sinister that we get to see within this storyline. There's so many great reaction shots over from Juan Jose Ryp, illustrated from Mr. Sinister himself. Also, really getting to see Mr. Sinister explore his interpretation of the Dominion, as well as the last couple moments within Sins of Sinister, is fascinating. I think that is one of the most interesting and just science fiction esque storylines within the Krakoan era. Really seeing Kieron Gillen head back to Sins of Sinister before the end of the Krakoan era is another just really cathartic aspect about this individual installment. I love how deep Kieron Gillen digs in the weeds of this storyline. He goes even beyond some of the continuity of Krakoa and even deeper within the realm of the X-Men universe. The way that Kieron Gillen has written these scripts month over month has always made it really rewarding to go back and check out previous issues of not only this series, but key X-Men storylines starring characters like Mr. Sinister as well within the narrative. Also, I thought the introduction of Mother Righteous's plot thread was incredibly harrowing within the storyline. My one aspect about it, the one critique that I can levy towards Immortal X-Men, is that I just think there's too many story scenarios that are similar to this one with characters like Destiny as well as Mystique within the narrative here too. That being said, though, I think the way that this sequence was carried out lent a little bit of a different visual element than what you would expect to see here. I found these final two pages in Immortal X-Men 17 to be so ominous and carry such a kind of sinister aesthetic, for lack of a better word here. The way that these two pages deal with two of the most important storylines over for this chapter create just an interesting way to close out our narrative that really keeps the reader guessing. I think some of the quotes that close and open up this chapter also really get readers thinking towards what the final stages of Krakoa and the end game of this narrative really is going to be here. So at the end of the day, I think Immortal X-Men 17 is just a wonderful issue, teasing so many disparate plot threads that I have no doubt will start to come to a head here as we get to our final steps with Krakoa. Really watching Exodus and this alternate version of Apocalypse go toe-to-toe here was incredibly compelling. I love seeing what Mother Righteous was scheming in the background of the White Hot Room, and I thought so many of the individual pieces of conversation between Mr. Sinister and Professor Xavier opened up so many additional elements of continuity, as we mentioned earlier, not just for this X-Men run, but for several X-Men runs lingering in the past. I want to know from you, what do you think of this really interesting chapter of Immortal X-Men? What were some of your thoughts on what Juan Jose Ryp brought over to this narrative? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming to check out our video review over on Immortal X-Men 17, and we'll be back to see where this series is headed and how the X-Men are going to close out the Krakoan era. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.